Hi, that's Bogdan, and today we are going to talk about two Neo-Gricean pragmatic theories of conversational implicature made by Horn and Levinson. Shared goal of distinguishing between different types or levels of meaning and of detailing specific and motivated principles that explain how speakers and hearers get from one to other has remained central to subsequent developments in the discipline. The term Neo-Gricean has become associated with pragmaticists who have continued to develop an account of meaning broadly along the lines suggested by Grice. They are attempting to make his theory better. These theories try to reduce the numbers of maxims. Lawrence Horn has developed a pragmatic theory in which implicatures are central to explaining many aspects of speakers' meanings, but are generated by just two pragmatic principles. He reviewed Gricean complex of maxims could be performed by what we termed the Q principle and R principle. Q is abbreviation for quantity and R for relation, but they are not straightforwardly equivalent. By the way, the maxim of quality fitted into a two-part system. The Q principle does the job of quantity, make a contribution as informative as required, together with the first two principles of manner. Avoid obscurity of expression and avoid ambiguity. To sum up, Q principle stands for make your contribution sufficient. Of course, if you believe that you say truth and only the truth. The principle sets limits on how little information the speaker can offer, because she must give as much as she can. The R principle covers the ground of Grice's maxim of relation, be relevant, but it also accounts for the work done by Grice's second maxim of quantity, do not make your contribution more informative than is required, and the last two maxims of manner, be brief and be orderly. It requires the speaker to make the contribution necessary, that is, to say no more than you must. It limits the amounts of the information the speaker should offer. Now, what you should find a little bit suspicious? Well, that Q principle is urging the speaker to do as much work as he possibly can, while the R principle urges him to do as little work as he can get away with. The most interesting here, the sense of opposition between the two principles is central how they work. Their compatibility doesn't mean that they simply cancel each other, but it does mean they limit each other's effect. Left to its own devices, the Q principle would require a speaker to talk about talk, given every detail, in case it might be useful to the hearer. The R principle puts a check on it. The Q principle makes it the speaker's responsibility to give the most informative account of a situation that she can truthfully give, and encourages the hearer to assume that if the speaker doesn't offer some piece of information, it is because she is not in a position to do so. Q-based implicatures can generally be described as implicatures that something is not the case. Very typical types of Q-based implicature has become known as scalar implicature. The explanation of scalar implicatures relies on Horn's insight that the language contains many sets of words or phrases that are closely related to each other in meaning, but differ in terms of the degree of intensity of what they describe or in terms of their semantic strength. The pair warm and hot is an example of such a set of words. Semantically they are close, but they differ only in an intensity. When we say that the bathroom is hot, we also know that the bathroom is warm and cold. The semantic scales of the language, which are sometimes described as Q scales or Horn scales, can be expressed by means of ordered lists which progress from semantically stronger to semantically weaker items. The R principle enjoins the speaker to say as little as it is necessary and therefore encourages the speaker to fill in material that may have been left from what the speaker said. That is, the R-based implicatures are generally examples where the hearer is licensed to understand a statement that is stronger than what has been actually said. The R principle can also explain a range of ways in which we leave certain things unsaid on the interest of politeness or discretion, but can be confident that the speaker will fill in what is missing. For example, he has had a little too much to drink. This can be uttered when the person is really very drunk. If an unmarked expression is used, it tends to implicate an unmarked situation. Something is unmarked if there is nothing unusual or striking about it. In the case of expressions, an unmarked form is one that is brief, or at least as simple, in terms of the number of the words needed to express it. Levinson's Pragmatics has much in common with Horn's, including its basically Gricean approach and its focus on the importance of implicature as a means of explaining many types of non-literal meaning, but it differs from it in a number of important ways. Like Horn's Pragmatics, it is reductive in relation to Grice, but whereas Horn proposes to reduce Grice's various maxims to two fundamental principles, Levinson's system consists of three such principles: the Q principle, the I principle, and the M principle. His Q principle is concerned with quantity, his I principle with informativeness, and his M principles with manner. By the way, another two aspects of the revised maxim are noteworthy. First, for each principle, Levinson gives both a speaker's maxim and a recipient's corollary. The latter articulates in some detail what sort of inferences are derivable given the interpretation rule. This detail is the second noteworthy aspect of the formulation. Unlike Horn's proposal discussed before, which aims for maximum generality, Levinson incorporates into the speaker corollaries specific inference rules. Readers are referred to the original for the full principles. Speaker's maxim in Q principle goes, "Do not say less than is required," and recipient's corollary is, "What is not said is not the case." I principle speaker's maxim is, "Do not say more than is required," and recipient's corollary, "What is generally said is stereotypically and specifically exemplified." In M principle, the speaker's maxim is, "Do not use a marked expression without reason," and recipient's corollary, "What is said in a marked way is not unmarked." The most fundamental difference between Horn's system and Levinson's are in terms of how the relationship between literal meaning and speaker meaning in context is understood. In this, Horn is closer to Grice. That's all for now. See you.